If you're looking for a delicious recipe for a nice butter pound cake, then look no further. This recipe is for you. So stay tuned to see how I get it put together. We start out by adding our sugar. I'm adding 3 cups of sugar. I'm adding a half a cup of shortening, that's butter shortening, 1 stick of butter, a half a cup, and 1 stick or half a cup of imperial margarine. All 3 of those are going to help with the flavor and the texture of this cake. We're going to blend all 3 of these together until it is almost a whipped-like texture. While it is blending, we're going to go ahead and get our flour together. I'm sifting 3 cups of all-purpose flour into this bowl, and then I'm also going to add my salt. Is only 1/4 teaspoon, and I'm adding my baking powder, which is 1.5 teaspoon. This is all going to get sifted, and even after I sift it, I go ahead and use my whisk and going to lighten this up a little bit more. Now, if you're using cake flour, you don't have to go through all these steps because the cake flour will already be pre-sifted. This is what the butter and the sugar looks like. It is a whipped looking texture, and that's how we know that the butter and the sugar is well incorporated. Now it is time to get our eggs together, and I pulled that little shield off, and I'm just whipping this around because I want to make sure that all the sugar at the bottom is mixed in with the butter really well. So you want to get a spatula and definitely go to the bottom of the bowl and scrape all the way around before you start adding your other ingredients. So after I did that step, then I went and I added my 2 to 3 drops of yellow food coloring to this butter pound cake to give it that deep yellow look when you cut into it. And then after I added that food coloring, I went and added a 3/4 teaspoon of vanilla flavor or extract, whichever you have, as well as a half teaspoon of butter flavor into this. And then I went and put my mixer on, and this helped incorporate all of those flavors and the food coloring. As it mixed, I went and add my eggs one at a time. These are room temperature eggs. I let them sit out for about a good 2 to 3 hours, so that way that it will not be cold and shock this once it goes into the oven and everything. You want to make sure that all of your ingredients are room temperature. This makes the cake rise to its perfection when it gets into the oven instead of having cold ingredients. This is the color of how the batter looks, and this is just the wet ingredients, the butter, the sugar, the eggs, the food coloring, and the flavors. You want to make sure that you also scrape down the bowl each time you whip this up with your mixer, because you want to make sure that all the ingredients is well incorporated, that you don't have any gaps or any lumps in the batter as much as possible. I also want to give a quick shout out to Denise Tanya 5666. I really hope you try this recipe because I noticed you love my pound cakes. So thank you for watching, and be sure to share this one. Once you got all of your ingredients and everything, all your wet ingredients mixed, then I slowly spoon in my dry ingredients 1 tablespoon at a time. Now you can do more, but this is just how I figure I can get the batter mixed really well without over mixing it. I add in my 1 tablespoon at a time, and then I also have some room temperature sour cream. This is approximately 3/4 cups of sour cream that is added to the batter. I only added half of that, and then I spoon in the rest. And of course, you want to do your dry first, add your sour cream, and then you finish this off with your dry. And you're still going to go ahead and scrape your sides down of the bowl because, like I said, you want to make sure that you have all of your ingredients well incorporated. You don't want any of that batter to have dry pockets. So I'm just using my spatula and I just go around the sides and I'm scraping it, even at the bottom where the whisk or the mixer paddle cannot reach. You want to get all the way down at the bottom and fold it in because you don't want to over mix this batter. It can make your cake feel a little bit tough or dry. So with you whisking and stopping in between and using your spatula as I'm doing, this is going to help incorporate it and cut down on that paddle time with you remixing your ingredients. I added my last portion of the sour cream into the batter, and then I'm going to finish this off by adding the remainder of my flour. And of course, I will scrape down that last portion of it. Once you have added all of your flour into it, your mix should look like this: nice and smooth and creamy. There is no dry spots in it. You see how thick and creamy that looks? That is how you know that your batter is well incorporated. Now I'm going to go and use a little bit of butter shortening, and I'm going to butter my cake pan. You can use the spray if you like, but I feel that the butter or the butter flavor shortening helps with the release of the cake when it comes out the oven. And after I add the shortening, then I'm adding about a good 2 to 3 tablespoons of flour, and I'm going to coat this pan really, really well all the way around. Once you coat your pan really well, then you pour your batter into it, and you want to make sure you get your batter evenly distributed all the way around the pan so that way your cake could come out nice and even. I just used the spatula, the back of it, and I kind of smoothed it out a little bit, and then I bang it on the counter to make sure I knock out any air pockets or bubbles that may be in the cake. Then I place it in my oven and I let it bake for about an hour and 20 minutes or hour and 15 minutes depending on your oven. Now for the glaze, I'm using 3 tablespoons of salted butter because I wanted to balance out that sugar and sweetness. Then I'm using also 1/8 of a cup, 1/4 of a cup of half and half. We're going to start with adding our salted butter to the pan, and this is going to melt. And then I'm adding my sugar, and then I will also add my half and half, which is 1/4 cup. This glaze is going to give the cake a really nice flavor. Like I said, I'm using salted butter because this is going to help balance out that sweetness with the sugar that is going to go on top. It's going to not necessarily have that clear glazy look, and that's how the cake look after it baked in the oven. Isn't it beautiful? After you take your cake out the oven and it's fully done and you do your toothpick test, I'm finishing up my glaze now, and I'm adding just a pinch of that vanilla flavor into this glaze, and I let it sit on the stove for about a good 3 to 5 minutes, and this is how the glaze should look. It's going to be a little loose, but that's what we want because we just kind of want the flavor. This is not going to allow the cake to have that crunch glaze on the outside as some glazes do, but this is just going to add that extra moisture to the cake and buttery flavor. You can make more glaze by doubling this recipe, but I kind of wanted to have just a light flavor of that buttery taste. And I let it just go all along the side of the cake and run down because the cake is still warm from coming out of the oven. And this is going to give this cake so much flavor. So you just drizzle a little bit on the bottom of the cake. And then once you get your desired portion of that glaze on the bottom of the cake, then we're going to flip the cake out as you see here. That butter flavor shortening and that flour gave that cake a nice release from the pan. And then I'm just using a brush and I'm going to brush on the rest of the glaze. I'm going to make that brush go in between all the areas, and then you turn it around and just kind of finish brushing that buttery glaze on the outside, and the warmth of the cake is going to absorb all of that flavor into it. And then before you know it, after you finish, this is the final project. This is how it looks with that lightly buttered glaze on that cake when it is nice and warm. So, if you like this recipe and you feel that your family will love it, please click like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. This recipe, I hope you all enjoy, and stay tuned for more. Thank you for watching, and God bless.